So I mentioned the traumatic experience I had as a young child with a birth defect that required surgical intervention and a lot of pain that arose from that, a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, a lot of mistrust, a lot of confusion about the way the world works to suddenly have to experience this kind of pain in my body. And as I said, there was a number of ways that then manifested in my life. I was shy, I was reclusive, I withdrew socially later in life. I used overeating. Overeating, I often say, was kind of my first drug. Food was my first drug. And from there, marijuana, pornography. I wasn't opposed to drinking a fair bit as well. Putting up that victim identity and also believing that I was somehow screwed over by the world, that the world was painful and that I needed to keep myself in myself and not bring my full authentic self to bear on the world. But, for whatever reason, in the face of all that, in some small way, I still did pursue what I found to be meaningful. While all this ego work was going on, like all that ego defense that my ego was putting up for me, I still pursued what I found to be meaningful. I didn't always do a good job. I didn't always follow through, but I was making that leap towards self-control, weightlifting, like I said, proper diet, pursuing my love and my craft of filmmaking, addressing my mental health issues. I can't tell you why I pursued meaning in the face of all this pain. I would say to you that if there's been a trauma in your life that's holding you back in some small way, it might be useful for you to start pursuing what you find meaningful. It could be a hobby, it could be a relationship, it could simply be getting a routine for yourself, getting out of bed in the morning, whatever that looks like. There's nothing more I can say besides you need to at least start taking that first step. But what I found was that in all that work that I was doing, self-work, if you will, my ego's desire for control slowly became quenched. I turned my control from the outer world to the inner world. Suddenly I was less concerned with what people thought of me. I was less concerned with numbing the pain. I was less concerned with seeking validation from other people, being liked, being funny. When I substituted or shifted that desire to control onto myself. I can't control what other people think of me, and some days I do still worry about it, but I try to use it to improve myself. I don't put it up here as far as its importance in how I see myself, but I think it's still useful. I can't change the pain that I suffered, but I know now that running away from it or staying put, not challenging myself, using marijuana, using porn, overeating, those aren't real solutions. Sometimes I relapse, but I know now why. And I think I've learned that in my body lie the solutions, and those solutions, weightlifting, walking, stretching, getting a hold of my diet, my sleep, learning to meditate, learning to take proper rest days, learning to take mindful control of my breath. It's been like coming home to my body, and controlling my behavior and not just operating on autopilot, not just on what feels good, not just on what feels safe. Because on some level, the ego sees us as an individual apart from the world, right? Like it thrives on that. It's really all the ego is. The word ego comes from the Latin for I or self. It's necessary to have a healthy ego to build a better life. That you're going to have empathy, boundaries, authenticity, the ability to communicate and be criticized, the ability to solve problems. I don't see, for me at least, a world where the ego is not a part of my life. But what we're talking about is giving that ego a healthy restart and shifting him into the back seat. But at the same time, I think it was that obsession with myself, with the self, with the ego, all that was done to me, all that was taken from me, all the pain that was inflicted upon me, my fear, my bitterness, all of that, it led me away from acceptance. I could never accept anything if I couldn't accept that sort of initial traumatic moment. So what this step towards acceptance looks like is not just accepting yourself, but it's accepting the nature of being as it is. right? Like there's so much out of our control. There's so much we can never know. There's so much that goes on that is beyond us. And as far as I can tell, someday it's all just going to end. But I guess I realized in the face of all that I can control myself and I can know myself, right? For all that's unknowable, for all that's out of our control, that proportionate amount can be turned inward on the self, and you can exact deep, unflinching self-control, and you can pursue a knowledge of the self. It leads to being humble, it leads to being disciplined, and it leads to the belief that better is possible.